Hi, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well and staying safe. Thank you so much for hopping on to join us for our exciting panel discussion on women in finance, breaking barriers. So, my name is Tiffany, and I'm here today with Kimberly. And today's event is hosted by Wall Street Girls, a financial education platform dedicated to empowering the next generation of female leaders in finance, and of course, the Kids Money Project, a platform focused on cultivating financial literacy among children. And we're super excited to have with us today three incredible women, Andrea Kovacs, Judy Hoberman, and Lara Butler. Thank you, ladies, again for agreeing to participate as panelists. Really appreciate it. During today's panel, they will be sharing with us their journeys into finance, their experiences as women in a male-dominated industry, some of the challenges they faced, their advice for other women out there interested in breaking into finance, and of course, their thoughts in cultivating financial literacy, especially among young women. We hope this discussion will allow you to learn more about various career paths within the financial services industry. As for the structure of the next 45 minutes or so, we'll begin with just some panelist intros, followed by the moderated panel discussion. And then of course, we'll also have some time at the end for an open Q&A session. So participants with questions can raise their hands by pressing the raised hand button on the screen, and then we'll unmute you so that you can address our panelists directly. We recommend you save any questions you have for the Q&A session. So without further ado, let's begin with just a quick intro to our panelists. I know some of you may have already read their bios from the Wall Street Girls and the Kids Money Project platforms, but it never hurts to hear from our panelists directly. So really quickly, Judy, Lara, and Andrea, if you could share your current role and any relevant professional experiences, as well as where you're currently based in the world, that would be lovely. So maybe we can start with you, Judy.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm Judy Hoberman. I am based in Dallas, Texas. I had a long career in financial services. I started out as a producer like everyone else and ended up with 3 agencies of my own. Today, I am an executive coach in leadership and sales. I'm also a speaker and a trainer. And I follow the philosophy, my mission is to help one woman a day, and followed by a philosophy of women want to be treated equally, not identically. So thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks for sharing, Judy. Lara, would you like to go next?
Yeah. I'm Lara Butler, and I currently work at Chartwell Financial Advisory. We do everything from company valuations to mergers and acquisitions to strategic advisory, which is the practice that I currently serve in. And they're based out of Minneapolis, but currently I've been in Florida. So.
Gotcha. Perfect. And of course, Andrea.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea Kovacs. I'm currently an MBA candidate at the University of Virginia Darden School of Business. I graduate this May, which is really exciting. And then after graduation, I'm going to be working for Wells Fargo in investment banking, specifically on the mergers and acquisitions team. Prior to my MBA, I was working for Bank of America doing both corporate finance and commercial banking, which I started right after graduating from the University of Florida.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing, ladies. So now let's start with the moderated panel. Kimberly, over to you.
Sure. Well, we're going to kind of just start out with a little bit of a generalized question, but one that's the reason we're all here tonight, which is, how did you actually become interested in finance, especially with it being as male dominated of an industry as it is? So, we'll kind of start with Judy. You're kind of up at the top right now. So we'll start with you, and we'll have each of you answer this question for us.
So I started out in financial services in 1990, and I was the only female, and I really had no idea what I was getting myself into. I was a single mom, and I knew that I could have relationships with people and encourage them to get their families protected. I didn't realize that it was going to be an uphill battle because I was not really wanted in my office. I was a girl. And so I worked really, really hard to make things different, and I did. I created my own playbook. I had 100% of my business coming from referrals within 90 days. And I absolutely loved it. When I say passion and insurance, people are like, that doesn't go together in a sentence. I'm like, yes, because that's really, I really loved it so much. But I had to get there and understand it before I could love it. And then I just loved it, and my career just took off. So I was excited. I was the only female. I was different. I was like, one of these things is not like the other, and that was me.
I love it. Let's see. Laura, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so I first became interested in finance, I think in high school. I had my first exposure to the stock market and investing that way, and then just kind of understanding what personal finance was. And so then it kind of felt like a natural thing to major in when I got to college. And then realized during my college courses that I liked the analysis and the technical side of it. So my first job out of college was in finance at IBM, and then made my way over to Chartwell, but I've kind of never looked back since starting in finance. But I would say that the interest started in high school.
That's great. No, and Andrea?
Yeah, so for me, I think finance is something I fell into more so than pursued intentionally. After realizing that I wasn't going to be a doctor in undergrad, I started pursuing a business degree. And at the time, Bank of America was recruiting from University of Florida, and they were a very well-renowned company. And I started at a leadership development program, which is something that was a really rare opportunity for me at the time. And I thought it would allow me to get a good deal of exposure in a short period of time, which it did. And once I started work there, I realized that the finance industry was really a space where I could make a difference in the future. And it is very male dominated, and it was tough at times, but I really just loved the corporate aspect of it. And especially from a more client-facing perspective too, in commercial banking, I really found my footing and continue to pursue it.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned that you can really make a difference, because I know a fair amount of women that are in the financial industry, and I hear that a lot from them, that they feel like they're really making a difference.
Perfect. So let's move on to the next question. So as Judy mentioned, finance is really generally associated with being a predominantly male industry. So we're interested in hearing, if you had any concerns when you decided to join the field in the first place, in terms of, work-life balance, being the only female on the floor. Could maybe you guys could share a little bit about that?
I could definitely jump in here first. I think my very first year working in finance was a pretty jarring experience, just because I was not, like, you kind of heard about women being treated differently in corporate America in school, but that wasn't something I was really exposed to in an academic environment. But when I started work, I was paired with a manager through the rotational program who just honestly did not know how to manage a woman. And I was not expecting it. I didn't want to be treated differently, but it just felt like he had no idea how to interact with me. Things were uncomfortable. Like, every time I tried to ask for advice or guidance, he blew me off or paired me off with like a female mentor who wasn't even on my team. So the experience was just really uncomfortable. And I think looking back, it's strange because I don't even think he was doing it intentionally. Like, I don't want to label him as a sexist man, but at the same time, I don't think he even knew where to start when it came to mentoring me or guiding me or helping me with my career. And I think it really impacted me negatively that first year, because it's not something I ever expected to run into. And there it was, fresh out of undergrad, and I had no idea how to handle it.
Yeah. Judy or Laura?
Well, like I said, when I came in, I was the only female. And I know that the reason that they wanted me there was because I was going to be able to check a box. And I used to hear what they would say behind my back. They would say, she's such a girl. She's never going to make it. She takes too long. She asks too many questions. Everybody has to be her friend. But the truth of the matter was, I was building relationships. And until my numbers started to show that I knew what I was doing, they didn't pay attention to me. Once I started getting to be successful, Then they wanted to know, well, how did you do that? And could you show me how to do this? And so on and so forth. And so then I started getting some of the male allies. And it's really important, you know, in this world, whether it's 1990 or 2020 or 2021, whatever, that you have male allies, because some of them can open doors for you. And, you know, like you said, Andrea, there's a lot of the men that don't have any idea how to deal with women. They just don't. They don't. And so we would start to teach them, you know, if you talk like this, or if you ask questions like this. And so we changed a lot of things. I mean, I was the only female for a very long time. I did all the field training, I did all of that. And they would watch what I would do. And all of a sudden you would hear them say what the things that I was saying and watch the results they would get. So it was kind of hard in the very beginning, but once I, you know, got my own footing, and once I was somewhat successful, it wasn't as bad. There's still men that have no clue what they're talking about when they talk to women, but that's always going to be like that. Men and women are different. It's just, you know, it's a profound statement, but it's the truth. We're different. So it's not right or wrong, better or worse. It's just different. And I think that sometimes you just have to, you know, just agree that it's different. And some of the, you know, some of the women are different. So it's not, you know, it's not anything like that. But yeah, it was hard in the beginning, but then it got to be like I said, I was so passionate about it that people just wanted to see me because they had no idea what I was doing. Like, so that's mine.
No,
Both
absolutely.
made awesome points there. And I think the only thing I would add is just a key takeaway being be confident in your abilities. I think that's something I have to tell myself a lot is, you know what, I deserve to be here. I'm smart. I work hard. You know, I might be underrepresented as a woman, but that doesn't mean that I don't deserve this seat. So I think you both have really valuable experience, and just kind of how to turn that and into something actionable would just be, we all kind of got to remind ourselves that we earned it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more there. Now, this next question is maybe a little different because we wanted to talk about mentorship and kind of getting into the finance industry, but you know, we've kind of hear a lot of you don't have anybody in your actual area or anything like that. I think both Judy and Andrea mentioned that you know, there really wasn't a woman. Did you seek out any maybe outside of that mentorship from a woman to give you another perspective, or did you? I know, Judy, you said you were the only one for a long time. You know, was there something that you've either found inside or, you know, outside, either from a woman or maybe even from another man, like you, Judy mentioned allies. That's always good to have on your side. And Judy, do you want to go first?
Oh, sure. So for me, like I said, I was the only female, so I didn't have a female mentor, but I also didn't know where to find one. You know, because I thought I needed to find somebody in my office or in our company, and there were no women. So I didn't have one. I did become the company mentor once, like I said, once I became successful. But the truth of the matter is that you can learn a lot from the men. You just can't learn everything. And so what I did when I started my company is I asked myself, what would I have wanted if I was just starting out? And I would have wanted somebody like me, not necessarily that looked like me, but somebody that would have understood what some of the roadblocks were going to be and some of the speed bumps, and your journey is going to be this. So maybe you want to try that. And so I became that person because I knew what I needed. And that's really what I did, is I became the person that I wish I would have had. And, you know, and today I tell people it doesn't have to be in your company. It doesn't have to be in your industry. If you find strong women, somebody that you can trust and somebody that you look up to and somebody that you admire, you just need somebody that will push you when you need to be pushed, but will love you when you need to be loved. And, you know, so yeah, there wasn't that there. So that's who I am.
That's great.
Yeah, and
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to chime in and say, Judy, you raised an excellent point, and that's so exciting to hear that you ended up being that person that you wish you had. Because I think my first year in my role, I wish I had a mentor, and in hindsight, it would have been on me to find one. But as a 22-year-old, I did not even knew how that worked. I was like, what is a mentor? I don't understand. So it took me until my next role to actually find a true mentor, and even that happened by someone just taking me under their wing. And this mentor of mine was like, hey, let me help you. Like, you know, let me guide you, let me teach you the things I know and help you as another woman in this industry who's been doing this she was doing it for far longer than I was. And that really helped shift my perspective around, seeking help and seeking out that mentorship, which wasn't something finding a mentor isn't something that's taught to you in undergrad, really. But then, people started talking about it more. And I think it's so important to find that early on as well. And I think that being said, some key advice that I can give on ways to find a mentor is to really just seek out people in the industry. Again, it doesn't matter if it's male or female, but like someone you truly admire and who is doing a great job, and get coffee with them, ask them about, their career, their lives. And even so far as to be pretty direct, say, hey, I really admire you. I want to be in your shoes in 20 years. Would you mind mentoring me? Like even something as direct as that can help facilitate a relationship and take it to the next level, rather than just having it be a one-time coffee chat. And I think I wish that's advice I would have had earlier in my career.
No, definitely. That is some fantastic advice. Just being proactive and reaching out, especially now with more and more people becoming aware of the importance and significance of mentorship among women. Just, sending out an email, asking them to grab coffee. Like people are nice. People are willing to, share their experiences. You just got to be proactive. Thanks so much for sharing that, Andrea. Lara, any other thoughts?
Yeah, so I am lucky enough that a director at my company, who's a woman, actually meets with me weekly just to catch up and chat and see how things are going. And she wanted to be a part of my professional journey. So it was something that I didn't even have to initiate, which was really great. And just thinking about that and looking back on how much that's helped me, it's something that I want to do for other people in the future. I think it's so great to have somebody that you can process things with, who can relate to you and maybe has gone through what you're going through. So I think that's really cool. And I think we need more women who are willing to just put time on your calendar and mentor you, whether you ask for it or not. So
can I just give you a statistic? And Lara, what you just said is so perfect. You are so lucky. Really, honestly, you're so lucky. There's a statistic that everybody should know, and that 65% of all women that have been mentored become mentors. And that's a really significant number. And it could be higher, but 65%. So if you've been mentored before, become a mentor. And if you've never been mentored, get one. So yeah, I mean, not many people have a director that says, I want to be part of your journey. So I think that is like tremendous. So congratulations to you.
No, that's fantastic. Well, and I know I had a mentor early in my career, and unfortunately she passed away, and I didn't kind of replace her for a little bit, and I didn't realize it for a while how it was actually affecting me. And all of a sudden, I was almost stagnant a little bit. And then I realized, part of what the problem was. So I ran out and got another one really quick. So yes, and I love that statistic, Judy, because I think you just have to ask. I really do.
Definitely. Yeah. So for our next question, this is on, professional experiences. So we were wondering if you could all share a favorite or like especially memorable professional experience you may have had, whether that be, with a mentor or just, like a challenging learning experience where you walked away from that project feeling like, wow, I accomplished something, I feel great, or, I gained this new set of skills. Anything about favorite professional experience. I think that would be a good discussion point.
Laura, do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, I would say my favorite professional experience is something that I get to do for my job. So the type of work that I get to do and the type of projects that I'm working on mean that I get to meet with CEOs and CFOs and COOs and being on board meetings and really important meetings where all these decisions are made for various companies. And I think I love this because I have no business being in the room with these people. Like, I just think these people are incredible. They've started companies, they've taken risks. And I think that's really special, and it's almost a good litmus test to see how you're doing professionally and where you're headed, because I think that you should always be surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you, and that's really where the growth happens. So that's kind of my favorite like professional experience that happens with my job.
I love it. You definitely want to get those people around you. You can learn so much. Judy or Andrea, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I can chime in with mine. And before I go into my more specific example, I will say to any of our attendees on the call, if you're considering an MBA, that has been an incredible professional development experience for me, as a huge growth opportunity overall. So I definitely can't say enough great things about it. But more specifically from a professional standpoint, before I started my MBA, I was at a crossroads, both professionally, personally, a lot of stuff happening in my life. And all of a sudden, I had this opportunity to shift from corporate finance into commercial banking, which is a pretty rare opportunity and not something that comes along very often. But due to everything going on in my life, I sincerely considered not taking it. I was like, this doesn't feel right. I don't know if I should. And my fiance, who is always my biggest support system, encouraged me. He's like, just take it. Just take the offer. Don't think about it too hard. Just take it. It'll be a challenge, but you should do it. And it was one of the best decisions I've made. And honestly, like that, taking that role into commercial banking is what persuaded me and convinced me that I belong in finance for the longer term. And it was why I pursued investment banking in my MBA as well. It allowed me to fall in love with the client side and the revenue generating side of the business. And if I hadn't taken that opportunity, I don't think I would have pursued finance, or I might have changed my mind. And it was, even though I wasn't in that role for very long, it was such an impactful experience for me personally.
That's great.
I love that the two of you just step up to the plate and give your accolades and everything, because we didn't have that. Women don't really necessarily want to share how awesome they are. And it's just when we should. The one that I always have something in my back pocket, because this is one of my absolute favorites of all time. When you're in sales, you get all these awards all the time. Everything's production, everything's numbers, because that's how you're scored. So I have eagles all over the house. In every closet you can imagine, I have eagles for production. But when I left the field and I went inside corporate, I was responsible for over 4,000 agents. I had to make sure they were trained and they were productive and successful and everything else. And I was at a regional dinner, and there were probably 1,000 agents there. And the gentleman next to me was also a trainer. And we were listening to the MC talk about all these awards they were giving out. And they said, there's one really special one, and it's, a character integrity award. And it really, means a lot. And then he just went on to something else. And so I said to this gentleman, I said, one day I would love to get that award. I would just love to get that. And then they called my name and I won the award. And so I cried, because I thought, this is something that the field nominates you. It's not something that you do yourself. And so to me, it meant a lot more than sales production. So, that's always my favorite. So, and it's up there.
That's right. Keep it where you can see it all the time.
That's right. And I do. Yeah.
Well, we've been talking about some of the challenges and stuff like that of being a female in the finance industry, but have you dealt with any other issues that a lot of times women tend to have when it comes to business, which is, maybe like imposter syndrome, or just trying to balance the whole work-life balance, particularly like if the two younger ones may not have kids yet or anything like that. So that's something you're going to get to experience for sure. But have you had any issues where you're trying to just balance everything? And, as a woman, it can be quite a bit different. And Judy, I'll let you start on this one.
Okay, so work-life balance is not always because you have kids or because you have a family. It's not always about that. I think one of the biggest challenges is when they offer you a position where you take the next level up, because it means a lot more responsibility, and you have to decide whether or not it's worth it for you, or whether you're in that space yet, because it means working more hours, and regardless if there's somebody at home or not somebody at home. And it's happened a number of times to me, and I did have kids when I first started, but I made my kids part of my business, and so the work-life balance was not as bad because they felt like they were responsible for some of my things. But I think the biggest work-life balance was when I was corporate and I traveled 90% of the time. And to me, you have no personal life. There is nothing. And I wasn't married at the time. I am married now, but I wasn't married at the time. And I had no friends and I had nothing. You couldn't. So to me, that work-life balance was a lot more difficult. And I can say that now I travel not as much, probably like 80% of the time. But after this past year with the pandemic and not traveling at all, I have to say, I don't really miss it. And so I've got my balance back, because you have to put some boundaries up. So yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I think setting up boundaries between your
Mhm.
personal life and your work life is just, the importance cannot be overemphasized. I think now with, the pandemic and everything being online, it could actually, on one hand, yes, it's more convenient. We don't have to commute anymore. But at the same time, it makes that boundary, it blurs the lines. And sometimes
Totally.
that can lead to, burnout. It can get overwhelming just to be on your screen all day, every day. Zoom fatigue is definitely a real thing. So
Mhm.
taking care of yourself, that's really important. And setting up those boundaries, as Judy mentioned, can be super helpful.
Andrea or Laura, do you have something you would like to add on that?
Yeah, I can hop in as well. I think and there's two parts to this, because there have been some unique experiences I've had in my prior roles, and then some things that I'm nervous about for my future role as well. And I think in my prior roles in finance, I definitely ran into not being able to be my authentic self at work. And I think that's something a lot of women really struggle with, especially when you're starting out in your career, and especially in a male dominated field. And I ran into all sorts of things where I would pretend to like what the men around me liked, just to be able to fit in or have a conversation. To this day, I still can't talk about football, but whatever. I mean, you try. And I think it was just, it just ended up being challenging because it didn't feel like me. And when you're not being yourself, it makes it really hard to connect with other people regardless. So that's something I'm still working on, especially going back into finance, into a male dominated field. One of my promises to myself is just to be more authentic and try and connect with people in ways that I can actually relate, instead of pretending to like things I don't or don't know much about just for the sake of being included. But then, going forward to going into investment banking, which is an industry pretty widely renowned for not having much of a work-life balance, that is something that's a concern of mine. But also just going forward, family planning, things like that. As a woman, it gets a little bit more challenging when it comes to a more demanding industry. And fortunately, I interned there this summer, and they seem to be very receptive about all of those things. But I get a question a lot that's like, oh, do you want to stay in investment banking long term? And while I want to be able to say yes right now, that's not a question I can answer until I get there and, go down the line and see if this is a sustainable, lifestyle career choice. But I think that goes for industries beyond just investment banking or finance. I think so much of our careers these days, it's easy to get caught up in the long term. But if you take it day by day and cross that bridge when you get there, so to speak, I think that's a very fair way to evaluate your career. Like, what works for you now might not work for you 10 years down the line, and that's okay. But you can make that decision when you get there.
No, absolutely. That definitely it's a lot of planning, and like you said, it's not just a finance career that happens. It's really any career that you need to plan out how you want it. You need to plan your life too, and so those two go hand in hand. Lara, Laura, sorry, do you have something that you wanted to add on that one?
Sure. Yeah, I would say in terms of work-life balance, that's something that I struggle with a lot. And I would say a lot of people do. I think in the past I've canceled or pushed back vacation days that I've scheduled for sake of accommodating, project deadlines and things that come up last minute. And it's hard when that happens because then there becomes an expectation that that's always going to be your response. And so this past year, I've been trying really hard to be cognizant and intentional about taking those PTO days and prioritizing, your physical and your mental health, because nobody's going to do it for you. And so I think the words of advice are, nobody's going to tell you to take all your PTO days, but you absolutely should, because it's something that you earned and it's your benefit. And if anybody's going to make you feel bad for separating that part of your life and taking time away from your computer and unplugging, then it's almost like a reconsideration of the culture of the company and whether or not you can see yourself being there long term, because you just kind of have to prioritize yourself because nobody is going to do it for you.
I think you said it
Definitely.
perfectly. Prioritizing
Words to
yourself.
live by. Exactly. Love that. So for the next question, this is actually something we've been kind of talked about already, but is there any specific advice you would like to give, other women out there who are interested in potentially pursuing a career in finance? And this can be, relevant to breaking into the industry, maintaining that work-life balance, maintaining your sanity when you're kind of the only woman on the floor, anything like that.
Yeah, I think my best advice is just to learn how to advocate for yourself. And that spans across all careers, because even though in an ideal world, your manager would recognize all of your awesome accomplishments and everything amazing you're doing, they also have their own day job and everything that they're wrapped up in. So this is something I'm still grappling with, and I was not good at it before my, in my prior finance roles, but really learn how to remind your manager about everything that you're accomplishing and all the great things you're doing. And I think this is delicate because sometimes it can come off like a brag, but at the same time, you're doing them a favor, because if you're updating them on the things you're doing and the tasks you're completing throughout your week, your day, your month, it just helps reinforce that you're a valuable member of the team, and it also helps keep them up to date. But from a broader perspective too, don't be afraid to say what you want and ask for what you want. If you want more money, you should ask for it. If you want a promotion, you should make yourself a known candidate and speak up about it. I think so many women fall into the trap of thinking that if they put their head down and work hard, then they'll be recognized. And the sad reality of it is that's not always the case. So being able to find your voice and advocate for yourself and speak up for the amazing things you're doing in your role will help you for the rest of your career.
I love that. And I love the part about asking for what you want, because they're not going to read your mind. So I totally agree with that. And I think more women need to speak up and ask for that promotion or ask for that raise, because we deserve it too. So I think that's awesome. And my advice for people considering being in finance is to go for it. So if people are on the fence, I think absolutely do it. And if you are listening to this and you're on the fence and you don't have enough confidence to maybe like pull the trigger and submit that application, email me and I will give you that confidence, because I think that we need more women in the field, and studies have shown that men are more likely to apply for a job that they only fit half of the criteria for. And women need to meet every single one of those application bullet points before they feel that they're worthy for a job. And that just kind of shows like that confidence gap. And there are tons of people that are willing to give you that push. But if you don't have that, I would love to be that person to just say, hey, you should absolutely do this, because I think everybody starts somewhere. And part of what people have concerns about is not having the skills to do the job. And let me just tell you that if you are a smart person and you work hard, like you can do any job. You're not going to start your first job out of college knowing already how to model complex financial acquisitions in Microsoft Excel, but you can learn. So I think that's something that is important to remember as you're looking at these jobs and looking at where you want to be. Everybody starts somewhere, and you just have to take that first step.
Yes.
Great stuff that I have to follow. So I do agree with both of you. I think that you do have to speak up. You do have to find your voice. You do have to be confident. But I think one of the things that got me through it is I had to know my why. I had to know why I wanted to be there and why I was good for that position. And once I had my why very clear, then it was a lot easier for me to go forward every day. It's, if you're trying to get into this industry, I truly believe it's the best industry for women because it's based on relationships, and businesses don't do business, people do business. So it doesn't matter who you're going after, it doesn't matter what person you're trying to get an appointment with or do business with. It's all about relationships. When I say that the guys used to say to me, you take too long, everybody's your friend, you ask too many questions, it was because I was building relationships. And I truly believe that this is the closest. Well, let me back up for a minute. There's no such thing as work-life balance. Let's just put it out there. There is no such thing. You cannot do anything 50-50. It has to be 100-100. So you can't have work-life balance. What I say is you have to have harmony. Wherever you are, you should be present, and that gives you harmony. So this is the closest industry that you'll get to get this harmony, because you will have the opportunities to grow, and you'll also have an opportunity to have your family. And you have to know what your priorities are, and you have to be able to do it. At some point in your life, your priorities change, whether you're just starting out, whether you're in it, 20 years, or whether you're out. It doesn't matter. You have to know your why, know your priorities, and be courageous, because you're going to be asked to do things that you've never done before. And guess what? You'll do it. You'll step out of your comfort zone, and this new place that you're in that's uncomfortable will be your new comfort zone. And don't get comfy, because you're going to step out of it again. This is the kind of industry where you have so many different ways that you can create an environment for greatness, and where you can really help people, whether it's investment banking, or whether it's mergers and acquisitions, or whether it's plain old insurance. It doesn't matter. You're going to be able to protect somebody with what they need to go forward. And I think that's a big responsibility, but it's amazing. So.
Yes, it absolutely is. Definitely. So I have kind of an interesting question that kind of comes from on my side a little bit, that I'm curious if any of you were actually, when you were younger, were you talked to about money? Did your parents explain money? Did you have a lot of conversations just explaining finances as you were growing up? And then what are your thoughts about actually kind of cultivating a financial literacy for younger kids, or for younger women in particular? So Laura, would you like to start with that one?
Yeah, I think that cultivating financial literacy at a young age is so important, because it sets the basis for how the rest of your life goes, and how you make decisions, and what you buy, and how you spend your time, and how long you have to work in your life, like when you get to retire. So I think it's so important, and there's so much that everybody says this, but I also agree, there's so much that you don't learn in high school that that is so important. But actually, I think I was lucky enough to be in, like, I think it was a junior achievement class or something when I was young, and they talked about finance a little bit in that. But I think it's just not a conversation that a lot of people are having, and it definitely has a place in schools, and it has a place in the world. And it's not something that you should first be hearing about after you graduate high school, but that's the sad reality of the current landscape. So I would love to see that change.
No, you're absolutely right. It's, for the most part, it is not in our school systems at all. There are some places that are starting to put some aspects of it in, but nothing to the extent that it needs to be, obviously. And so, and unfortunately, it's a topic that's kind of taboo at homes. That's why I was curious if y'all were actually talked to, since you did end up in a finance career. You kind of wonder if you were actually talked to at home about it. What about you, Andrea? Oh, are you there?
while she's figuring out the headphones, just raise your hand when it gets fixed, Andrea. But I will just add to another thing is investing in the stock market. I think it's kind of taboo and a lot of people are scared of it. And it doesn't have to be a scary thing. And I would love to see more education around that because it seems like a select few people that are interested and educated when it comes to investing. And that's something that can really change your life. Andrea, is it working now? Or?
Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Something with my microphone's off, but I completely agree, Laura and Kim. I mean, I think it's so important to start learning about money when you're young. And honestly, my mom did an incredible job with this. She started talking to us about money very early on. I remember having to save up 10 pennies to get the Barbie doll I wanted. And I mean, but just, like early on, I had to earn them too. And that was a theme that she wove throughout my childhood. I had to earn my money, and it really made me realize you earn it so hard, but it goes so quick if you allow it to. And so it was just a really important lesson around earning money and saving and making sure that when you're spending intentionally. But even going further, I think it's such an important lesson to teach, especially young girls, because I think they're not, we don't focus on that as much. And even when we do start talking about money, a lot of it is centered around men and teaching them about money. But finances is something that impacts everyone's life on a daily basis. Like, you don't have to be working in the finance industry to be thinking about money every single day. Every decision in your day, at least one, will probably be centered around money. So I think it's such an invaluable thing to start teaching at a young age and showing young children that how they can spend with empowerment and earn money and empower themselves through that.
Absolutely. How about you, Judy? Were you talked to about money growing up?
No, it was not a topic you talked about. Money didn't grow on trees and money is the root of all evil. Those are the things that you heard. But I had to figure that out myself. I remember the very first paycheck I got and I cashed it and it was all new money. And my father took all the money and he crumbled it because he didn't want it to stick together. And I started to cry. I said, it's not worth the same, because I didn't know that an old money or new money was, that's how bad it was. But when my kids were growing up, I was very deliberate and intentional that they should know where money comes from and how they earn it. And my kids always worked. So when they wanted to get a car, they had to come up with 50% of it, and I came up with 50% of it. And that's how they learned. And all my friends would say, how do you get them to do this? How do you get them to work? I'm like, I don't get them to do that. That's part of growing up. You have to be able to do this. And so I have to say, I have two very good humans that grew up to be very kind and caring adults, and they do know the value of money. But I do think it has to start really young, because when kids are getting an allowance, and it doesn't matter if it's 5 cents or $500, it doesn't matter. They have to know what they can do with this and how it can grow if they, invest in. And they don't have to invest, where they get interest or anything, but they have to know that they can save some of it. They don't have to spend it as quickly as they get it, because it does go right through your hands. So
it's funny how fast money can disappear if you do not have a place for it to go. So no, I love that. And yay for Andrea's mom for talking to her about money. That is, I'm so excited for that, because unfortunately it's rare to hear that. And again, I don't think it's anything, parents aren't being bad and all this. They actually just don't. Nobody talked to them about money that way. So it's just not thought of to have these same conversations. So I love that y'all are kind of talking about that and advocating for these conversations to definitely start happening for younger kids. Well, so that kind of wraps up our questions here. So we would love to hear from our attendees if they have questions for our panelists. As Tiffany mentioned before, there is a raise your hand button down at the bottom. And if you'll hit that, if you have a question, I can actually unmute you so that you can actually ask them directly. And if you would just maybe tell us your name, where you're located, and if your question is directed to somebody specifically, maybe mention that, or if it's to the entire group, we can certainly do that as well. And if you're having a problem with that, if you can't find that or having an issue with it, there is always the chat area. If you want to put it in there, if you're having an issue with the raise your hand, we can always do that as well. So, and oh, I am not seeing any hands yet. So, oh, here we go. Here we go. Alexis, are you with us?
Yep, I'm here. Hey, ladies, thanks so much for doing this. I've learned a ton and definitely have had a lot of your points kind of resonate with me. I'm in finance as well, but it hasn't been an easy journey. So I actually met Andrea a few years ago and have kind of followed her path ever since and been very inspired. So good to see she's in good company. My question sort of revolves around the imposter syndrome. So we hear a lot about that. And just wondering, like, have you dealt with that? I know we've kind of, a lot of the answers have kind of grazed by it, but would just love to hear you sort of talk about it directly. You know, when did you feel it? What did you do about it? Have you ever helped anybody else kind of deal with it? I know, especially in our industry, it's tough. So just love to hear a little bit about that.
Oh, great question.
Yeah, thanks, Alexis. Thanks for joining the call too. So I definitely dealt with a lot of imposter syndrome my very first year in that rotational program at Bank of America. And that was very much perpetuated by my manager. And it was really challenging. It was hard to not feel put down on a daily basis. I have two pieces of advice for this, which is anytime you feel like you don't belong, just remember that the women in finance and women in corporate America, this movement is growing. And it's not just a check the box thing anymore. I think something that resonated with me this summer was having conversations around diversity with my boss. And he was saying that, you know, this isn't even an internal thing. Like, our clients want to speak to women. Like, we have more and more female clients every day, and they want to see women at the table. So you absolutely belong and are wanted where you are. And I know it can feel daunting when you're around a lot of other men, but from a day-to-day perspective, you know, on your worst days when you can't seem to remind yourself why you're there, I think it's really important to have like a community, especially a community of women who you can text, ping, grab a coffee with, lean on, who will just hype you up. The amount of times I've texted a good friend of mine or a mentor and I'm like, I'm having a really bad day, can you please help me? And that just really helps lift my spirits, and just someone who will text you back or go for a coffee with you and remind you why you're awesome. And I think that has helped me so much throughout my career, just having that little bit of like stepping away from work, that reminder, that refreshing walk or coffee or tea, and just a conversation with a friend who's going to remind you why you're awesome and that you belong where you are, because you absolutely do.
Absolutely.
So I was going to say that imposter syndrome doesn't have an age limit, because it happens when you least expect it. Sometimes it's when you're involved in a program or a project and you don't understand why they've asked you to do this, and you have this whole conversation in your head about why you're not good enough or smart enough or whatever it is. But it also happens outside of it. And it actually happened to me last week. I was asked to be, 2 weeks ago, I was asked to be on a live cast, and I said, absolutely. It was all these great things that I was going to be doing until I read the bios of the people that were going to be there. And I was frozen in my tracks, like frozen. And I said, I can't do this. These people are like major people. I can't do this. I can't do this. So the very first thing I did was I called my coach. And she said to me, let's talk it through. Let's, you know, you're supposed to be there, blah, blah, blah. And she gave me all these things to do and whatever. And I still was not ready to do it. So I called my male coach, because I always have two, because I want different perspectives. And here was this conversation. Really? Seriously? What's the big deal? They asked you, they sought you out, get over there. And that was the end of it. And so I said to myself, I have a message to share. I know that I'm awesome, but I needed somebody else to give me that little nudge, that little push that said, you are awesome. Just like what Andrea just said, somebody usually has to tell you that. And then all of a sudden you're okay, but it has no age limit. It has no, men too, they're imposter syndrome. So no age, no gender, no nothing. And inopportune times when it shows up.
Well, and I
Definitely.
think that's true. All right.
I
Let's
think we have another hand.
Yes,
Kimberly.
we do. Looks like Alex. Let's see. Are you with us there, Alex?
Yeah, actually, this is Beth. I'm borrowing Alex's computer. I'm part of Andrea's fan club, so she's laughing right now. My question is actually for Judy. I'm going to insist that my broker dealer bring you in to our annual meetings because we have so few female investment advisors and we really need them. And I started out in insurance too, Judy. So I'm just so excited to see you tonight. And my question is really, how hard was it to write your books?
So my first book was Selling in a Skirt, and my coach told me, you're going to write a book, and I said no. We went back and forth a million times, and then she said, you have 30 years of experience, you have to get a book out there. So the first one was a little bit tough because I didn't want to do it. The second one was easy. I did it in a week because it was every mistake an entrepreneur could make, and I made all of them and then some. So for me, it was like whoop. But the third one was a compilation book, so that was a whole different story. But my last book is my best book. It's Walking on the Glass Floor, and it's all about the 7 qualities that women leaders have. And that took me about 6 months because I really needed to do some major research on how it was going to be laid out. And it is a great book, I have to say, because people tell me that, not just because I'm saying. They tell me that they learn a lot. They write all over the margins because it's all these things they want to know. So the books are not hard. You just have to decide what your topic is and then get somebody to assist. So if you need help, just let me know. I have plenty of resources for you.
Well, I'm just so amazed by people who can write. And I think you're such a good inspiration.
Oh, thank you.
For all the young women out there, because really, I had so few role models. And it's just wonderful what you all are doing. So thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for a great question. Thank you for joining us. Do we have any other questions coming in?
I would just like to say that I am totally impressed with Andrea and Lara. Really, totally impressed with the two of you because you're really showing young women that this is an incredible career, and that you have this incredible voice and knowledge, and not afraid to share, and not afraid to talk how great you are. And I think that those are some of the most amazing qualities that a lot of women don't have. So I'm totally impressed with the two of you. So thank you.
Well, I can second that. I actually have only gotten to know y'all here just pretty recent in the last couple of weeks, and I know I've been very impressed just being able to follow y'all a little bit. And finance is a kind of a different animal, particularly starting out, and you don't maybe sometimes have the mentors that you need. And I love the fact that Laura, you've got somebody that's there for you. And I know, of course, Judy went and sought hers out, as she got older and she became one herself. And I know y'all have actually already, started even being a little earlier in your careers. You're already wanting to help women break into this industry. And I thank you for that, because we need more female role models and mentors out there for sure. So thank you for that.
Definitely. You guys are for sure role models already, and we really appreciate you taking the time to share your experiences, because as we've discussed, it's so important for other women out there, young women out there, to hear from people like yourselves, who've walked this path, who've experienced everything that we've discussed, and it's super valuable. We really appreciate your time, and thank you again for joining us today.
Well, since we don't have any more, I'm sorry, did somebody say something?
No, I was just going to say thank you, Kim and Tiffany, for organizing, and for everyone on the call. I just want to say I'm really excited to be here, and I'm excited and looking forward to my career in finance too. I've said this to a lot of people, but I think there's a palpable shift happening in the industry, and diversity is becoming more important. Women in finance is becoming more important and demanded, and I'm just really excited to see where it goes. So I think that's my words of encouragement for any young women out there who are excited or looking forward to a career in the industry.
Absolutely. I know I'm looking forward to it as well, because I think more and more women are coming into it, and I think it's going to be a fantastic opportunity, and seeing where it goes from there. So, all right. Well, we don't have any other questions showing up over here. We did record this session, so if maybe you were a little late coming in, or I know we've had some that weren't able to join us that did sign up. We do know that things happen. So we did record the session, and it will take just a little bit of time, probably about maybe about this time tomorrow or something, but we will have it up on our websites, and then we will also send out an email to all of the attendees that has a link to it as well. That way, if you missed anything, or if you just want to hear something again, it'll be there for you to refer back to anytime you want. And again, we want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. I want to thank our wonderful panelists for coming and sharing their journeys with us, and their stories, and their words of encouragement for those that are looking to get into this industry. So we will go ahead and sign off. Tiffany and I, obviously, we are here to help any of you in different areas. Tiffany with Wall Street Girls is a little bit more talking about women and getting into finance. I focus a little bit more on encouraging parents to talk to their kids about finance at these earlier stages. I can speak from that just because I was fortunate I had a mom that did that for me, and I cannot tell you what a game changer it was when I got into the real world. And so that is what the Kids Money Project's all about. So in that email as well, it will have our information, that if you want to follow along and see what we have going on, you can do that. And we appreciate your time this evening, and we look forward to having y'all kind of follow along, and we'll be here to answer any questions you may have. So thank you, everyone, and thank you, panelists, and we look forward to seeing what you do here in the future.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.